Hi everyone! So today we are going to be reading Imprisoned, Maxi X Listener. Things are starting to get interesting. Also, a little bit of a reminder or a remember of some sorts. Don't forget the theory that I told you about.
Remember when I told you guys about that small detail to keep in mind? The camera? Remember whenever it's mentioned that Tim has a split personality and whatnot, and his other personality, I believe, is masky? I think that was him.
Keep that in mind. I'm keeping it in mind also. And let's see if what my theory states is true or not. Let's find out. We is in chapter 11. The day was going by painfully slow as Wyan struggled in watching the rest of the few Marvel Hornet videos. An unpleasant feeling of being watched haunted her as she carefully inspected the videos, taking detailed notes. She was starting to believe everything that Jay and Tim were claiming. It scared her. No, it terrified her. Yesterday, she was hoping for just a little bit of proof, wanting so to desperately believe the hurting Tim. Now, when she actually got it, she wished she had never gotten involved in the first place. The cost of solving this case had risen, and it was just getting too expensive. She couldn't afford to die like Jessica, who she assumed dead. Her father still needed her. Without her, he would definitely be transferred to a public nursing home instead of a private one. Wyan knew exactly how sanitary it was and refused to let him anywhere near it. She had created a feeling of concern and uncertainty towards Timothy Wright. It was easy to trust him when she didn't believe the tapes, but now, right now, she couldn't help but think of him as a psychopath. Could you blame her? She kind of just saw him trying to kill Jay over and over again. As a detective, she had to be suspicious and probably keep an eye out for him. You never know when people like them were going to strike. Jay kind of explained it in his videos as well. Tim isn't that crazy masked man normally. His normal self was harmless and even a bit shy. In one video, which was probably one of the hardest videos to watch, his experiences his a wild seizure before turning into his other less friendly persona. The thing about that oh my gosh. The thing that worried her the most was that she had experienced a few coughing attacks. 2 times he could have changed. 2 times if she wasn't around. Well, actually not. Because she was probably the main reason he had an attack, and that made her feel very bad, but that wasn't the point. The point was that he was always at risk in becoming a very dangerous individual, and sadly it was her job to put them away for good. Oh. Wyan had no interest in arresting Tim. She had taken a liking to him, and according to the tapes, he probably had a lot of terrible experiences living in captivity. Hey, Wyan, you going home? Harold once again woke her out of her endless thoughts. It had gotten darker outside, and the night shift officers were already arriving. It's time already? She had lost track of time, only being able to think about those damn Marble Hornet videos. Yeah, you're really obsessed with those videos, aren't you? He asked, looking over her shoulder at the still playing video behind her. Noticing she had turned off the computer, she quickly closed the tab and shut down the computer. She'd rather not bring Harold into this. They're just really interesting, she muttered, getting out of the chair and stuffing the notes in her back pockets. Taking the jacket off of her chair, and she hastily put it on, walking past Harold towards the exit. Harold didn't follow her, still staring at her computer. Wyan, noticing he wasn't following her, stopped looking back at the man. You coming or not? She asked, kind of annoyed, wanting him to desperately back away from her computer. Yeah. He grumbled, turning towards her, finally following her out of the police station. Walking by Martin's front desk, they noticed he had been replaced by a much more professional-looking person. It was Flavio, Martin's night shift replacement. Flavio was a dick, and everyone knew so. So nobody ever really talked to him. Like every officer, they walked by him quickly and quietly, making sure not to make any kind of contact. Martin may be lazy, but at least he was somewhat bearable. Finally making it out of the station without being judged by Flavio's cold blue eyes, they stopped quickly. Well, this is where we part ways, like always. Harold played played with his old car keys of his minivan, smiling at her. Yeah, I guess so. Wine didn't want to go home alone. She was scared. Since she became aware of that disturbing soccer footage, her excitement for going home had vanished. Harold seemed to notice her dull expression, his dad instincts kicking in. Look, Wyan, if you ever need something, me and my family would gladly help you. His strong hand gripped her shoulder protectively, giving her that worried dad look. Wyan couldn't help but laugh. She liked the thought of someone caring for her, but this man was only 5 years older than her, and acting like her dad. I think I can take care of myself. She tried to remove his hand from her shoulder, but he wouldn't budge. Just promise me you'll ask for help when you need it. He was serious, dead serious. Wine's laughter soon disappeared, immediately avoiding his strong gaze, sighing in defeat. I'll try. Her answer seemed to please him enough to release her shoulder. I think I have no other choice than to trust you'll make the right decisions. Have a nice night, detective. His cheerful tone returned as he headed towards the dirty minivan. See you tomorrow, officer. Wine waved him goodbye, watching as he struggled to open the van's rusty doors. Giggling at the sight, she herself started to walk home. Now I think about it, since she walks home and has a stalker, I think it's best for you to get some type of fat car girl. Start saving up some money. I don't think it's a good idea for you to walk alone. Anyway, continuing. Walking slowly, she desperately tried to lengthen her way home, constantly checking her surroundings. That unpleasant feeling of someone following her didn't help. Wine examined everyone who passed her, even the innocent school kids who were riding around with their bikes. Anyone of these civilians could have taken that video. Everyone could be a stalker, and everyone could be a killer. Her trust in the little town was fading as she saw everyone as criminals. She imagined the whole town standing outside of her window, watching as she poured herself dozen cups of wine, judging her silently when they watched her take ibuprofen like a prescription drug. She felt scared of the outside world and her own home. Her apartment building grew closer as her fear started to build. From afar, she could see Samantha watering some of her dozens of flowers. Was Samantha being watched as well? If that person could see into her window, then he could probably look into her window as well. The feeling of guilt now joined the party feeling bad for probably putting an innocent woman in danger. Wine had reached the apartment entrance. She didn't enter immediately, taking in a long, deep breath, preparing herself mentally before walking in. Her apartment door looked untouched and just how she left it. No signs of a break-in. That's a relief. Retrieving her key from her wallet, she walked into her well-known apartment. It seemed empty and untouched like the door, but she needed to make sure. If the person was skilled enough, they could place thousands of bugs and cameras around the house. Starting a wild search in her own house, she looked around every corner, tearing apart her couch and other furniture, ripping all of the kitchen cabinets open. She examined every plastic cup from her stack and opened all opened all of the small amount of food she had in the fridge. Stumbling into the bathroom, she looked into every cube and every crack, grabbing ibuprofen while she was at it, hoping it would numb her once more. Hours passed until she felt satisfied that she was alone, taking a seat on her messed up couch, leaning back, closing her eyes for a while. It had gotten dark outside, the silent darkness putting her in a mood to sleep. Her mind worked against her as a disturbing feeling of an unwanted presence kept her awake. Something was off, and the feeling was warning her. Scanning her room, she noticed the open blinds. A rookie mistake, she told herself as she got up to close them. As she was about to let down one of the dirty blinds, she noticed a figure standing outside of her apartment. Not being able to see the full figure, she leaned closer to the window, trying to peek around the corner to the apartment entrance. A tall, skinny figure appeared as the loud, ear-piercing noise she heard last time. In the forest with Jay and Tim appeared. Surprised by the sound, she backed away, cringing at the unpleasant feeling. Out of instinct, she placed her hands over her ears, hoping that it would somehow block out the sound. It didn't help, as the painful sound continued. Her stomach turned as she felt the sudden urge to vomit. Running towards the destroyed bathroom, she quickly leaned over the toilet bowl, preparing for what's to come. It wasn't long before she had to flush a gross amount of vomit down the toilet, not being able to stop. She felt so miserable and sick. She didn't even notice the pain sound slowly disappearing. The vomiting started to calm down, as well as allowing her to step away from the toilet. Chugging down a few cups of water slowly, recovering from the incident. Wine headed into her excuse of a bedroom, searching around her tiny, messy nightstand. She couldn't sleep knowing there was someone outside. For God's sake, she was a police officer, and she knew how to deal with the criminals. A smile showed on her face as she found exactly what she was looking for. In her hand laid a hunting knife she got from an old friend for her 18th birthday. It was old, but it was sharp enough to cut that sucker. Testing a random flashlight, which she found. If it worked, Wine slowly approached her patio. Nobody could be seen from the inside of the house, but somehow she knew someone was there. Opening the glass door, she carefully stepped into the cold night. She had taken her jacket with her, so luckily it didn't bother her too much. Flipping the switch on the flashlight, she sent a ray of light towards the tiny forest next to her apartment. The sounds of crickets and cars driving by was the only thing to be heard. Nothing out of the ordinary, but every little sound alarmed her. With careful steps, she slowly approached the forest, fumbling with her knife. She didn't want to use it, probably not having the guts to kill anyone, anyways, but there was no way she was gonna go in there unprotected. Once she reached the edge of the forest, she grew aware of the fear that was controlling her. She didn't care. She needed to know who that man by the apartment was. Taking one last deep breath, she stepped into the dark little forest, unaware of the amount of danger she just put herself in. Oh, shit! Chapter 12. The light of her old flashlight flickered slightly as she fought through the dense forest. Small pointy twigs stabbed her sensitive face from every angle. She tried to desperately avoid them, still moving further into the dark forest. Everything seemed normal, not even a little piece of trash laid on the forest floor, and there also weren't any obvious footprints. There weren't any signs that a person ever walked through this part of the forest. Her eyes focused on the small trees around her, mistaking every second tree as a person. The cold handle of the hunting knife sent shivers down her spine as her grip on it tightened. The knife was the only thing that could protect her from whatever was in here. If the tapes were true, there could be a handful of ruthless killers in here. Why did she enter this forest again? Was she really this stupid? When did she make the absolutely fabulous decision to enter a stalker-filled forest? She didn't even see the man near the forest, so why did she enter it? In her mind, it made sense because according to the tapes, the forest is their favorite hangout spot. Something just drove her into the forest. If it was her own decision, she didn't know. She was beginning to question everything, feeling manipulated. Even while questioning her actions, her body seemed to move on its own, deeper into the forest, into an unknown direction. The presence of her sharper knife was weirdly calming, almost like a royal partner who never left her side. She noticed her trembling hands as the almost dead flashlights never stood still. Why was she this scared? Why couldn't she feel it? She was numb. Was she cold? Everything warned her to turn back. go back into the little apartment and just sleep it off, but she couldn't. An unknown feeling of desire manipulated her body as she kept going on. Something within her needed to see that creature she saw in the shapes, and in front of her own apartment building. A sound of a twig breaking in half woke her out of her dangerous trance, instantly knowing she was screwed. How could she forget the part of the tapes where that thing tries to kill everybody and he comes in contact with, or manipulate them? As soon as the word manipulate popped into her mind, she knew exactly what was going on. That thing was manipulating her. Maybe even make her some sort of slave like that Alex guy. Her fear catching up with her, she instantly turned around, prepared to make a run for it. Her eyes suddenly started to tear as she broke down coughing. The sudden cough attack scared her. She hasn't smoked in about 6 hours. Even though she shouldn't be coughing, she couldn't stop as she fell towards the forest ground, trying to catch her breath. Twigs and tiny pointy rocks stabbed her hands as she tried to hinder the falling face first into the ground, dropping the knife in the process. The flashlight, which fell on the ground, gave up as its light surrounding her in the dim shine of the moon. Oh, that it's just getting worse and worse. Forcing herself up to her feet, she looked around the forest, feeling an unpleasant presence. Suddenly, she noticed something move immediately, directing her attention towards it. Just a few feet away from her stood a tall, faceless man, seeming illuminated by the moon and staring directly at her. Her coughing worsened as she struggled to keep herself upwards. The figure terrified her as she couldn't help but stare at it. Whatever the thing was, she knew she couldn't keep staring at it. The coughing slowly started to get better as it was replaced with that unpleasant, high-pitched noise she heard earlier. Covering her ears, she let out a painful scream, feeling like her head was about to explode. Her body trembled in fear as she shut her eyes tightly, now unaware of her surroundings. The darkness didn't help her as the sound continued, making her wish she were dead. Her eyes opened instantly as she felt herself falling towards the ground again. What seemed like in slow motion, she hit the pointy forest floor, her head nearly missing a huge rock. The fall knocked her already small amount of air out of her lungs, leaving her gasping for it. She didn't seem to get any as her fear and adrenaline took over. Her vision was blurry, a large amount of tears streaming down her reddened cheeks. With trembling hands which made their way toward her neck, she noticed an unfamiliar thing surrounding it. Whatever it was, it felt soft, like a fluffy teddy bear. Even though it felt soft, she knew it was killing her. Her weak hand pulled it to whatever it was trying to desperately get it off. You don't want to live, trust me. Her blurry eyes widened as she figured out what was keeping her from breathing. Someone was choking her. Someone was trying to kill her. A spark of rage now joined with her mess of emotions. She wasn't just about to let that happen. With the newfound strength, she began to pull on his properly gloved hands, getting a few fingers loose. Taking one of the loose fingers, she twisted them downwards, pointing his hand, making him pull away in pain. Pulling his other hand away, she finally got a good breath of air. Inhaling large amounts of sweet air, she felt the life return to her once again. Now being able to breathe properly, she noticed a dark-hooded man strailing her, getting ready to choke her again. She caught his hands just before they reached her neck, pushing them back. Having a better distance, his strength way outnumbered hers, but that didn't stop her from trying. Gritting her teeth, she pressed against his big hands, trying to pull him off of her. Stop resisting, he hissed at her, his hands getting dangerously close. I can't die yet. Her fighting spirit grew stronger as she thought of her helpless dad. Nobody would take care of him if she wasn't there to pay. Dying just wasn't an option. Her still watery eyes looked around her, searching for something to fight back with. Maybe her knife, which she foolishly dropped somewhere, was around her. Somewhere around her. The forest floor was dark, making it hard to even spot a rock. A new spark of hope lit up inside her as she spotted her dead flashlight laying quite close to her. It was no knife, but it was something. Taking a risky chance, she let go of the man's hands, reaching towards the flashlight. The man instantly started choking her, making it harder to grab the life-saving object. As she felt the cold metal of the flashlight, she grabbed it quickly. Before the man could process what she was doing, getting a good grip, she slammed it into the man's head without hesitation. Surprised and hurt, the man backed away, letting go of Wyan as his stance was secure. Using his weakened stay, she pushed him off of her, getting up as fast as her shaking legs could allow it. Flashlight in hand. Turning around, she made a run for it, forgetting her long treasured knife. It was too risky going back to it. The faceless creature had disappeared. The loud, painful noise as well. All she was left with was a broken flashlight and a probably giant bruise around her neck. Ignoring the obvious pain on her neck, she bolted through the forest, aimlessly searching for a way out. Her shortage of breath caught up to her as her body basically begged her to stop running and take a deep breath. The fear of the dark-hooded man following her kept her going, not wanting to be choked again. A cursed root on the ground suddenly wished to interrupt her running, tripping her, making her fall towards the ground once again. "Oh shit!" she mumbled to herself as her scratched face hit the dirt ground painfully. Hissing in pain, she held herself with shaking arms, scanning her surroundings. Nobody seemed to be near her. The forest was being painfully quiet. Even the crickets seemed to shut up. Forcing herself on her feet, she learned that even if it seems like nobody was around, some dude would probably still jump out of nowhere and choke you. Yeah, totally left lesson there. Finally standing on her feet again, she started to run, hopefully towards freedom. Still running, her eyes spotted a warm light similar to a street lantern. A hopeful smile crept on her face as she ran towards it, never slowing down. The forest seemed to end almost immediately as she stepped onto the hard concrete ground. She was out. She made it out alive. Tears of joy now mixed with tears of fear as she smiled at all the suburban homes around her. To her luck, she didn't end up being far away from home, knowing exactly where she was. Instinctively, she turned towards the direction of her beloved home, desperately needing a cup of wine. She was about to take the first step towards home as she quickly stopped. Going home was a death wish. An unsettling thought popped in her head as her situation became clearer. Whoever that man was dangerous and obviously wanted to kill her. It would not be an unlikely story that he was the creepy man stalking her. That would mean he probably knew where she lived and was probably already waiting there. A feeling of helplessness shook her body as more tears started to fall from her face. Her safe space was gone. Her home was gone. What else? Where could she go? Which person could help her in a time like this? And past self. Look, Ryan, if you never ever need help, me and my family would gladly help you. Harold's caring words rung through her head. He would definitely help her. No, she couldn't do that. She couldn't drag another person into this mess. She couldn't drag her only good friend into whatever this hell was. You know what? Come over anytime you need help. My door is always open. Tim had also offered to help her, but she wasn't just a stranger. Why would anyone help a stranger at 10 p.m.? With sounds of the force behind her ripped out of her thoughts, turning around, someone was there again. Not taking any chances, she made a run for it. She knew where she was going. She knew who she was going to ask for help. All she could do now was hope that the person wanted to help her. Running on the empty night street, she finally spotted the house she was looking for. Quickly approaching the front door, she banged on the door loudly, not knowing if anyone was chasing her. Steps could be heard from behind the door as Wyan stepped back, constantly looking over her back, paranoid. The door opened to reveal a tired man staring at her with wide eyes. Wyan? Chapter 13. What the hell happened? Tim's worried eyes scanning her body, noticing multiple wounds, small and big. Wyan, still terrified of what happened earlier, pushed past him into the kind of known house. "Shut the door. I don't know if I was followed," she instructed, leaning against the wall, desperately trying to catch her breath. "Followed by who? What's going on?" Closing the door like she instructed, he approached the hurt woman, desperately trying to make sense of the situation. "There was this thing and this monster in the forest. Some crazy person tried to kill me," she tried to explain, stuttering over her words, rubbing her sore neck with her freezing hands. "Kill you, monster? What?" It almost seemed like a light lit up in Tim's head as his eyes widened in fear. That the monster looked like the one on those tapes. He got closer to the shaking Wyan, placing his hand on her shoulder, making her look at him. Yes," she muttered quietly, scared of his reaction, more tears streaming down her hurt cheek. "Shit," he cursed, turning away from her, running a hand through his messy locks. "Shit!" he yelled, punching the wall in frustration, making Wyan flinch. Tim gently grabbed her wrist, pulling a confused Wyan towards the same couch she sat on a few days ago. His angered expression never left his face as he examined her arms and legs. His mood worsened every time he found a single cut on her limbs, his actions becoming more violent, gripping her arm tightly. Everything within him seemed to explode as he found the forming bruise around her neck. Calming himself down, he put both of his hands around her neck, caressing it carefully, making sure he didn't put her in any more pain than she already was. Is this how he tried to kill you?" he asked harshly, trying to calm himself down by taking a deep breath. "Yeah, it wasn't a really effective way," she replied with a playful mood, trying to lighten up the mood. The disapproving, serious look on his tired face shut her up immediately as she looked down to his chest, letting him examine the bruises further. Tim's hands left her fragile neck as he turned away from her, in silence, walking in the opposite direction. Wyan sat patiently on the couch, not having any strength to get up anyways. Using her time alone, she looked around the house. Trash still littered the room last time she ended up here. She could be mistaken, but it looked worse than before. Ugh! The sound of Tim's footsteps grew nearer as he entered the living room once again, with tons of bandages, little and large, and a freezing Ziploc bag full of ice in hand. Wyan smiled at his caring gesture, happily accepting the bag of ice. The ice seemed to burn her neck in a comforting way, kind of numbing the uncomfortable pain. Just a bag of ice is okay. I don't need all those bandages." Wyan interrupted Tim as he was about to cover her hand with a disinfectant alcohol. Tim quickly glanced at her before pouring the alcohol on her hand. Wyan, surprised by the sudden stinging pain in her hand, tried her best to not rip it out of Tim's grip, dropping the bag of ice in the process. Tim didn't let go as he turned her hand towards the woman. As he turned her hand towards the woman, showing her the damage the force inflicted on her hand. Wyan's eyes widened in shock as little stones or either types of forest dirt snuggled into the painful wounds on her hand. Taking out a rather particular pair of tweezers, covering it in alcohol, not wanting to infect the wound, Tim slowly started to take out the unwanted guest in her hand. The room fell silent, Wyan wincing once in a while biting down on her lip, trying to handle the stinging pain. "Why did you enter the forest in the first place?" Tim interrupted her painful squirms, still working on her injured hand. I thought I saw the figure near it," Wyan mumbled. She knew how stupid it must have sounded. "I went into the forest fully aware of a stalker psychopath that probably lived there because I saw a figure near, quote unquote, near the forest. Now, she could think properly again. She would have never made that dumb decision." "Give me your other hand." Tim seemed to be done picking the dirt out of her right hand, gesturing towards the left. A bit hesitant, Wyan slowly showed him her left hand. It definitely wasn't as bad as the last one, but it still needed to be cleaned. Gripping her wrist tightly, he poured another load of alcohol on her poor hand, earning a quiet but painful scream for Wyan. Going back to work with his handy little tweezers, the room grew quiet again. "Why did you come to me?" Tim didn't look away from her bleeding hand, but his voice seemed soft. He almost seemed kind of flattered by her visit, even though she was probably covering his carpet with disinfectant alcohol, giving the room that hospital smell. You're the only one who would know what to do. Wyan knew she only came to him because she didn't want Harold to get involved with the shit she got herself into. It was hard for her to get over that Tim being a psychopath thing. It was hard not to see that masked man in him now. Excuse me. It was hard not to see that masked man in him now. Tim smiled to himself, happy with her answer. Pulling the last little stone out of her hand, he grabbed one of the bandages, securing it tightly around the wounded left hand, doing the same with the right. Tim, I need to tell you something. Wyan looked down at her bandaged hands, fumbling with her blood red fingers. What? Tim didn't seem to be looking for something, giving her a short half-ass answer. I think someone's stalking me. Wyan looked up before immediately retreating back a bit. Tim's face directly in front of hers, only inches apart. Damn really said, huh? He really said, huh? He really said, huh? She could feel the warmth of his breath on her cold nose, and smell his typical smoker breath. It wasn't attractive at all, but somehow she felt that special feeling. Having a couple of boyfriends in her time, she knew what falling in love felt like, and the feeling was dangerously close. Being this close to him, she could see all the imperfections on his skin, all the scabs his hectic shaving had given him. But she didn't care. She enjoyed his presence, and it was scaring her. What gives you the feeling you're being stalked? Tim muttered, concentrating on something entirely different. Distancing himself from her face for a bit, he grabbed some sort of cream, squeezing a pea-sized portion on his finger. Coming back to her face, he slowly dabbed the cream on some little cuts she got from the branches in the forest. Wyan was too shocked by his actions to even answer his question, watching his brown eyes closely as they searched for more wounds. He would often put more cream on his finger, making sure every cut was completely covered. Didn't she call him a psychopath a while ago? Well, it was hard to be careful of him when he acts like such an angel. Seeming pleased with his work, he backed away, searching for something in his pile of bandages once again. Remembering the stalker thing, Wyan seemed ready to answer his question. Well, his answer to her question. I found a video online. It shows footage of me at home. Tim looked up at her from his pile of stuff, his worried face now even worse. Tooth Rick? Whatever. He asked worryingly, inching closer to her face, something unfamiliar in hand. Yeah, how did you know? Wyan stopped her sentence as Tim placed a band-aid over her cheek. Wyan's eyes widened in shock and disbelief. This grown-ass man was carefully putting bandages on her face. He seemed more motherly than that animalistic beast of a man she observed in the tapes. How was he still confusing her? That jerk stalked me plenty of times, Tim answered nonchalantly, not seeming bothered by the close contact. So someone stalking you is normal now. Wyan was bothered by his monotone answer. He didn't seem to care about the someone stalking him. Of course not, but trust me, that isn't the worst thing that has happened to me. Tim backed away, looking at his work. Wyan could feel all the bandages sticking to her skin, imagining how stupid she must look. Her neck made itself known as an uncomfortable dull pain haunting her neck. Looking around her, she desperately looked for the pack of ice she carelessly dropped on the couch. Finding it, she smiled to herself, only noticing the half of it already melted. The Ziploc bag now filled with cold ice water. But it was still cold, and therefore was still suitable for cooling off her hot neck. What has happened to you? Wyan looked down on Tim worryingly, who was cleaning up some of his supplies. Just hope you won't figure it out, he mumbled, not looking away from the pile. The room went quiet again as Tim cleaned up the messy pile the best that he could. Wyan watched him, the bag of ice water pressed against her neck, carefully and curiously, desperately trying to read him. He seemed so different from what he saw from those tapes. What should she believe? The tapes or the man standing in front of her? Me and Jay are leaving town tomorrow. You're coming with us. Tim surprisingly spoke, surprising way in. Wait, what now? So, I'm sorry to leave y'all on a cliffhanger here. I'm so sorry. But I need to go back down because that's actually a good one. I'm gonna stay back down, surprisingly, the first time in forever. But anyways, so now we found out some specific details. So we cannot guarantee. So the masked man, from what we read on these couple chapters, is not Tim. It is another person. Another person that is controlled by you know who. Or, works with the you know who or whatever. Da 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 da. This is very interesting. And we get a few minor details about marble hornets. Like I said, I'm still not that good. Listen, my cheapest excuse for not doing it is because I've been busy all week since summer is getting nearer and nearer. I can literally taste it, man. I'm excited. Anyways, not getting far from the subject. Yeah, pretty much. It's pretty interesting. Nothing too crazy. But let me know what you guys think is going to happen next. What do you think Ryan will choose? Will she choose to believe the tapes or the man who's standing in front of her? See, I told you I would use it. Let me know in the comments down below. I think she should definitely believe both, to be honest, because both is true. You've seen it. It's fact, boom, it's there. You've seen it in front of your face. I think she should believe both. Because I believe both is true. Because wherever back in time she is, there's not much, Photoshop as there is in today's world. So, yeah. Yeah, the whole shenanigans. But sadly, I gotta cut this a little short. But I hope you guys enjoyed. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more amazing videos, guys. I really am interested to know what will happen next, to be honest, because these chapters are getting hella intense. My goodness. And they're amazing. We're getting more and more details, and I'm like falling absolutely in love. Absolutely. I have been reviewing some books to read, for future, things. So there might or might not be a voting a fan fiction soon. Maybe there might be one soon or later on, but just giving y'all guys, just in case y'all might want to know this. But your girl got to go. I see y'all in a future video about this. Bye and peace.